actually figure out what's on tonight.
He's an absolute magician.
Oh, we're going. Nobody goes full ballistic.
I go for ballistic.
Should I put the USO jersey on just to match?
Should I put my Dortmund Pulisic jersey on as well?
3 stages of ballistic.
3 stages of Pulisic.
Oh man. See, this is why we're all friends.
Yeah. I'm so happy about that Dortmund Pulisic jersey. Also, it's one of my favorites.
Mine is at the point of it being too small because I got it
I used to have a retro USA jersey. You know when they had the gradient going from the blue up to the white.
Oh.
That one's one of my favorite US kits.
That was easily that was like the first US kit that I bought was that gradient one. I loved it.
Remember, Steve, the US gradient kit that was blue that goes up to white, that went up to white?
Yep.
That was the first US kit that I had.
Nice. First kit I had. I had the. Let's see. Well, I had a Waldo at one point, and then wore that out and had to throw it out. Because that became like my default Game Watch jersey, and it just that doesn't go well.
No.
Had the Centennial.
Especially
I still
when
have the. Yeah, I have a Bradley Centennial. I have the powder blue sleeve Yedlin, and I have the white collared with the crest. Was that the 2010 Cup?
Yeah, that is a throwback one.
Yeah. So. Oh wow! When I went with the crest, it went right around the S. That was perfect. I'm seeing it on delay because I'm not realizing that I put us live.
Oh.
Is an absolute magician. He set up for...
Hello and welcome to another, formerly weekly edition of Troy Nunes is an Absolute live stream. We haven't been here for a while, but we're here to be here with you this week. With you as always, Steve Haller, Andy Pregler, and Christian de Guzman. How are we doing, guys?
Pretty good, Steve. In celebration of new NIL laws, I've worn my Red Bull F1 jersey shirt, which has all the sponsors.
Every sponsor.
Yes.
In case those of you who are wondering, we are looking for sponsors. However, we are not college athletes, so I do not think that our value is very high. However,
What are you talking about, though? We bring so much value to the Syracuse media and everything in the Syracuse community at all times.
Yeah, I'm actually going with the opposite. I'm wearing the Yuso Passanen jersey so that he has to give me money.
No, yeah, that works, yeah.
business.
If anybody's hearing this in Finland, let him know.
Yeah, as Steve alluded to off the top, it has been a minute since we've been here. We had some vacations. Christian's working in baseball. Steve and I were not in central New York or our normal locations. So we took last week off, and then yesterday, as you know, was day that things go boomy day. So we are here on Monday night, July 5th, bringing back the live cast. We'll be doing this intermittently throughout the summer. The goal is every week, but obviously, as you can tell, that is fluid. And we've got a lot to catch up on. Before we get to the fun, interesting stuff, we want to just take a quick moment and say there was a really big story that broke since we last were live. It involved Coach Quentin Hillsman of the Syracuse women's basketball program. He's the head coach. The Athletic wrote a very good story about it. As soon as the story came out, the university announced that there was an investigation going on. There was a lot that we covered on the website. There's a lot that all of us tweeted about it. I don't think that it's the best idea for us to rehash all of that now. And I think we're just at the stage where we kind of have to wait for the investigation to play out, because I think that and what the reporting of Dana O'Neill does in a follow-up to the investigation will probably be the bigger story and the thing that actually impacts Syracuse University this fall. There were a lot of documents in that story that were alleged to be possessed where they claim one thing and the university says another thing. So once that investigation is completed, we'll cover this more in depth. There will definitively be fallout from that investigation. That's when we'll revisit the story. If not, as you should always be, go to NunesMagician.com, read the full story that we have on there. It's way more in depth than we're going to get to tonight. But we do want to bring up that, like, we're not ignoring that. It's just been talked to death. And there's a lot of other things that we can catch up on that I think the three of us are far more in our depth to actually talk about. So, on that downer of a note, let's talk about something good that happened for college athletes in the last 2 weeks. And that was name, image, and likeness rights, otherwise known as NIL, being given back to the student athletes. They are now allowed to monetize off of their name, off of their own brand. If you do not follow any athletes on social media, their DMs are all open. They're all looking for sponsorships. I saw that about 15 times on my Instagram and on my Twitter. For those of you who are wondering which Syracuse athletes got a visible offer, the ones that I saw were Buddy Boeheim and Marek Dolezaj. I don't know if there were any others that had obvious offers. Josh Black was out there doing some good sales pitch work for himself, but I don't think he has anything quite yet. But yeah, this is a weird new landscape where we live in the sense that athletes are actually starting to make some of their own money, and you can now go out to, theoretically, you could go to Fanatics tomorrow and buy a customized Syracuse jersey with an actual player on it and be allowed to do so, which is kind of cool. But Christian, I'm going to kind of toss it over to you. Like, you've been, you know, a lot closer to these athletes more recently than Steve and I have. That is my way of calling Steve.
Are you calling me old?
Yes, 100%. I'm calling
Yes.
both of us old. What I think a lot of people are lost in the value that just being able to make a little bit of money in college can bring to the student athlete experience. And I want you to kind of like elaborate on that. And, you know, the NIL stuff is going to have a big impact on the kids in college right now. We can get to the ones who already graduated in a little bit.
Well, the big thing is that so many of these kids, like you alluded to, have such a big social media presence, and the fact that they haven't been able to like partner with brands or to like make some money off that social media presence is big. Like, remember a couple of years ago, there was a kicker from UFC who decided to walk off the UFC team because he wasn't allowed to monetize his YouTube channel, which was going to make money for him, and so he decided to go with the money and not play college football for UFC and make some money off his YouTube channel. And so that's the same thing with some of these kids who have huge followings on social media. I mean, TikTok has done a lot for that as well. That's a big area I know where the three of us have no clue what the hell is happening. But they're, like, the TikTok and Instagram branding that goes with these social media pages that these athletes have is really where a lot of the money is going to come from. And it's fun to see that there's no restrictions now, because athletes were so restricted in what they could and could not post. And now these athletes can also not only work with brands in a positive way, but also make some money for them, which is so big for a college athlete in general, because so much more goes into your life than a full tuition. There's still more expenses that anybody can like have to feasibly live with. So the fact that these guys in any sport, it's not just football, it's not just basketball. We see people from softball, we see people from gymnastics starting to sign some huge deals. And so these athletes in all the sports around the entire NCAA, not just in Division I, but in Division II and Division III as well, can now start to use their brand and not be restricted in the way that they have to play on the field or way they post online is big.
Dude, when I was at Union, if I could have gotten a deal with I Love New York Pizzeria in Schenectady, it would have been phenomenal.
Exactly.
Like, the amount we were there, we should have, but it wasn't legal back then. Now we're in a situation where it is.
Yeah, if I was an athlete, I'd be asking for a deal for wings over Syracuse. I mean,
Oh, there you go.
seriously.
Well, I think the other part of this that is important to talk about is the fact that athletes can get sponsored. They can do an Instagram ad, they can do a Twitter ad, whatever it may be. But the other important aspect is that they're now able to make money doing other things. Like, there's a ton of athletes, you alluded to it, Christian, like, if they want to start a YouTube channel, they can monetize that YouTube channel. If they're an artist or they're a poet and they want to get paid a commission, they're allowed to do so now. Something as simple as, hey, you're a writer, and most writers get paid a stipend for doing a piece, or you get gas money to go cover whatever sporting event it is. That kind of stuff was not allowed and severely limited the professional career opportunities and growth opportunities for a Division I athlete outside of the classroom. And I think that's probably the biggest piece of all this, in that, as the NCAA says in their own ad, most of these athletes are going pro in something other than sports. And when you make NCAA athletes unable to have the same level of flexibility in terms of where they can work, how they can receive compensation than the rest of their peers, you are putting your NCAA Division I student athletes at a disadvantage of being a student. And that kind of inequality has been something that the NCAA has really failed to acknowledge. And because of this NIL, I think we're going to start to see that, inequality start to level out a little bit more. But we're still not all the way there. And one of the things that did happen this week, or in the last couple of weeks, was the NCAA versus Alston verdict. For all of you Supreme Court nerds out there, the Supreme Court of the United States basically did something that it rarely does, which is come down unanimously against a party. In this case, they came against the NCAA. If you didn't read Brett Kavanaugh's piece, as our former SB Nation colleague Ryan Johnson said, Brett Kavanaugh basically wrote a blog post and called it an official opinion, where he bashed the NCAA for 1,000 or 2,000 words. And the whole thing opened up the door for different types of compensation for student athletes. And Steve, you cover football for us now, and you cover a lot of other sports, but you started off covering soccer because that was something that just no one else did. And you saw and know a lot of these soccer alumni who were at Syracuse before the program was even good, and they're playing soccer because they love soccer, but their student life experience was significantly different. And I'm assuming now you can probably, better explain than I'm doing what life will look like for them in a way that didn't exist before July 1st of this year.
Yeah, and that's it. For one, I never thought I would, wholeheartedly agree with Brett Kavanaugh on anything. But that aside,
that's a lot of people.
Yeah, that aside, like the soccer team, the volleyball team, like any of these, like quote unquote, what's always referred to as the Olympic sports, your non-football, basketball, in Syracuse's case, lacrosse, setups, it's really going to bolster what they can do and what they can and can't accomplish on campus. Any of these are non-full scholarship sports, like or limited scholarship opportunities. So, like, look at even the lacrosse team. Look at what they're working with for scholarships at a school that's, how many tens of thousands of dollars a year between room and board and whatever. They are now able to bolster that with alternative stuff. I don't know if Warrior's running out the door to grab the next great guy, but I'm sure there's plenty of up and coming brands that want to tie on to some of these new kids and ride with them, or the soccer guys could tie into something, especially some of the European guys coming over. There's ties back home. There's options that could basically subvert what used to be the tried and true NCAA, you can't do anything that isn't legitimately part of your sport. And that was a pain in the ass. Like, we had compliance, like crazy compliance training at the D3 level when I was playing. I can't even comprehend what it's like at D1. And you go from that to Justin Barron signing a deal with Yoke, who's a video game promotions company. Like, there's since July 1st, we've come a long way. It's only been 5 days, and we're already in the Wild West. Like, and that's the other thing that's going to happen is right now we're in the Wild West. Everybody's signing with everybody. There's things going left and right. Jimmy Boeheim is on Cameo.
Cameo, yeah.
Like, you can get a speech with all of the Boeheims for a total of $320 on Cameo. So if you want to talk to all generations of Boeheim, they'll probably grab Jamie too for the hell of it. Like that, maybe they can add that as a like buy 3 get 1 free. I don't know. Like it's NIL is we're in this weird ass situation where we have no idea what's going on and what's going to happen. So yeah, it's definitely a bolster, not even from the sponsorships deal, but the ability for John Q. Public, that's a walk-on for the crew team, to go out and get a part-time gig at the Pizza Hut down the street. That wasn't authorized prior. So the situation we're in now, hypothetically, alleviates a lot of the issue with some of that sort of stuff too. So that it's putting the NCAA situation in a whole new light, and I think 99% of people would agree for the better. So
I mean,
here we are.
Yeah, and look, like again, reportedly 2 women's lacrosse players from Syracuse have already signed with Barstool. Anthony Quealy has his own sneaker business on the side, and previously he hasn't been able to really tie his name to, and now he can tie his name to that without really much NCAA repercussions. He's had to kind of dance around the NCAA regulations to keep that sneaker business up and running. And then you mentioned the men's lacrosse team. What's to say that Joey Spallina, when he comes to campus in a couple of years, won't partner with Paolo Lacrosse? And that's one of the biggest opportunities that you could see, like, especially because now that you have a big alumni base who have so many successful businesses from all different schools that can connect with the current athletes, like Spallina with the Powells, or the Powells partnering with the Gates again. That would be just, like, the possibilities are endless, not just for the current players, but also for the alumni as well, who have their own successful businesses outside of school, to give back to the school in a different way to support the athletes that are currently playing.
Yeah, I think the overall landscape is going to dramatically change in the sense that there's going to be a lot more moving parts, but I do think it's important to mention, I don't think we're going to suddenly see giant recruiting shifts. For anybody who was paying attention on July 1st, the big schools like LSU, Clemson, Bama, they had videos ready to go. They were all their typical, we have more resources than you and continue to offer these benefits that smaller schools just cannot compete with. And that will always be a recruiting advantage, even with the NIL opening up. I think what you're really going to see is that it's going to not necessarily change the power dynamics of the NCAA. It's just going to make student-athlete welfare and life better overall. And that is important for an organization that claims to be student-focused first. So, obviously, we've all been saying this stuff forever. The NCAA is begrudgingly coming along because they're getting litigated to hell in order to make this happen. And so, for the big question becomes player compensation. It's almost assuredly going to be taken to the Supreme Court if the NCAA doesn't figure out a way to regulate that before a case gets to the Supreme Court. We're still several years away from that, but it does feel more like a ticking time bomb rather than a hypothetical that's going to require some hurdling to get there. But that is a topic for another live cast. What we will be getting into on another live cast is that we have confirmed our good friend Connor from Homefield will be our first ever live cast 2-time guest. He's going to come on and talk to us about the world of college licensing, which now all of a sudden is the hot button issue. But Connor's been doing it for years. We'll get all. If you have any questions for him, hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up in the Discord. We'll make sure to ask him those questions when we bring him on later this summer to kind of talk about all this and what he's seeing from the other side of being a company that makes money off of college name and likenesses, and what having student athlete participation in that marketplace looks like. Continuing, like we kind of mentioned some basketball, we mentioned some lacrosse. We'll talk lacrosse real quick. Kayla Trainer is going to be the new head coach of the women's program. Steve and I had a really long conversation about how the women's program was kind of put in limbo because Kayla Trainer allegedly turned down the first offer. If that is true, I hope she got a raise out of it. Good for her. And ultimately, I think, Christian, this is the right move. This is the person that Syracuse wanted. This is the person that Syracuse needed post-gate to make sure that things are as close to business as usual as you can get when your former coach is staying in the building but no longer associated with the program.
The important thing was for Syracuse to get an alumni of the program, I think. I don't think like trying to reach out and find like a Joe Spallina who was at Stony Brook and doing wonders for that women's lacrosse program to come in, I don't think would have necessarily been the right move. And there was plenty of women alumni out there, but to have someone like Trader, who was a consensus unanimous first team All-American all 4 years that she played at Syracuse, who has set numerous program records, and to see and a person who's had success already at the collegiate coaching level, most recently on Boston College's staff when they beat Cuse in the last national championship game. That just shows that she's experienced enough to take this job as her first head coaching job, and I think it was ultimately the right move. And it's going to be a unique look to the program, especially because Trainer has had a part in helping Boston College win the last 2 Tewaaraton Awards, Sam Apuzzo and most recently Charlotte North. And now you have another one coming back, a Tewaaraton Award favorite coming back to the program in Emory Harrischuk, which should only bolster Syracuse's chances for another run to the national championship game in 2022.
Yeah, you take the person who's been responsible, or partly responsible at least, for the last 2, and put someone with that amount of talent in front of them. I'd say it's a solid situation.
Yeah, and don't forget, the Trainer herself was a finalist for the Tewaaraton Award, I think three times, if not 4.
Yep.
3 times. So, I mean, although she never won because Taylor Cummings was in the way, she is still one of the best women's lacrosse players of all time. She's still on the U.S. women's national team, for crying out loud. So
actually, as we speak, I think she's in camp for the.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. So this is one of the best players of all time, and she's proven that she can translate her playing skills to a coaching career as well.
Yeah, and that'll be good to take, 3 national championship appearances as an assistant head coach into the seat that, has the talent currently to make it a 4th. So we'll see if SU can get back to that title game and see where that goes from here.
Yeah, it feels like Trainer is in a unique opportunity where she can basically coach a legacy that finished a lot that she was so close to doing in getting the award and getting a national title for Syracuse. Like she was right there for both things, and now she's going to be at the helm. And if she can bring one or both of those to Syracuse and to the women's program, that is going to be an incredible resume and legacy that she will have holistically when it comes to her conversation in the names of every other great Syracuse player, especially the ones that have come back and coached. It's becoming quite a thing for a lot of Syracuse programs, with the most notable being men's basketball. And we got some men's basketball news. Connor, or if you're listening, whenever you come on, we're going to talk the Big Ten ACC Challenge, because Syracuse is playing Indiana with what feels like the default ACC Big Ten Challenge game. I think it's happened once. It's just that NCAA tournament game happened, and for whatever reason, Syracuse and Indiana have legacies tied to a certain national title game that shall not be mentioned. These two programs will meet again, and Syracuse's schedule continues to look like a bit of a gauntlet before we even get into ACC play. Steve, we talked about this a few casts ago. We have our reservations about this roster. We have a lot of reservations about this schedule. You knew you were getting a premium opponent. Indiana isn't necessarily like an A-plus program, but they've got a new coach, which means it's going to be hard to scout them, and they're going to be unpredictable, and Syracuse does not typically fare well with unpredictable, especially early in the season.
Yeah, back that up. Syracuse doesn't do well with unpredictable when Syracuse is also unpredictable.
Yes.
Because we have no idea what we're going to get from this team. Like, there's a lot of pieces back, but who the hell knows what's happening?
You say a lot of pieces, but it's like 2 and then some change here and there.
Okay, yeah, it's about 50%. So,
well, of
actually,
the minutes,
no, not even. Now that I'm thinking about it, Jesus God, what the hell happened to this team? It's not like we've been talking about that. I take 1 week off and I forget what we've talked about for the last 10 weeks.
That everyone left you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Forgot about that. Oh, forgot about him. No, it's gonna be interesting because it is kind of blank slate going against blank slate when you have new coaching staff on one side, you have almost all of the team on the other. Everyone but the coaching staff switched on the other side. So, Connor, Godspeed. I'll put some sort of gentleman's wager on it when we're on the cast, but who the hell knows what's going to happen coming out of that?
Like the thing is, we don't know if that game's going to be like a shootout or a defensive affair or one way shape or the other. Like,
right.
No one knows what's going to happen with these two teams.
Yeah, there's
no one
a
knows
lot
the
of
identity of either of their teams.
Right, there's a lot of games where you're like, okay, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I know how it's going to play out. This one's just a crapshoot, full crapshoot.
And it stinks because we're in the space where we're looking at the men's schedule, and we know that they're probably going to go 500 in the ACC. Like, at this point in time, I think Syracuse is definitively somewhere between 10-6 and 6-10 in ACC play every year. Like, that's just kind of where we're at. And then it becomes a question of, okay, what do you do with the rest to kind of bolster your resume and get off the bubble? And what we're seeing so far is that, no, that's not going to be the case because thank you to John, who, as is always, just neurotic about scheduling, who has listed out the Syracuse opponents.
Yeah. Never.
This is where we find out that when we get to the Battle of Atlantis, our first round opponent is Baylor.
Yeah, having Arizona State, Auburn, Baylor, Connecticut, Loyola, Chicago, Michigan State, VCU be, the field, and you're going to play 3 of those teams. I honestly think Syracuse is probably the underdog in all but one of those games.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And it's probably not all that different. They're going to be an underdog to Villanova and MSG, and which Syracuse has not had a good record at MSG in the last few years. Hi, UConn. I hate you. They have to go to DC to play Georgetown, which has proven to be a trip up for young Syracuse teams under Boeheim before. We've seen it with this group of Syracuse players before. We've got the typical ACC road slate, which is not going to be fun. So then the road games, you've got some easy ones against Drexel, Lehigh, Lafayette. But, it gets squirrely, and then you've got Indiana. And then you've got the rest of your ACC schedule, which includes Florida State twice, Duke twice, Pittsburgh twice, Miami twice. Like, there's not a lot of positive in my voice here. Is what I'm trying to make clear.
I think you may have just dubbed the tagline for this Syracuse season. Syracuse basketball, things get squirrely.
Yeah,
we may have to run with that the way everything's lining up. That might be what we have to run with.
Andy, you found your title for the article now for the page.
Yeah, I really did. So everybody who's watching live, you know what the article is going to be tomorrow. Because, but I mean, like, is there any other way to put it? Like, this team's not going to blow anybody out unless Benny Williams comes in and is Carmelo Anthony 2.0. Like, this team's
yeah,
entire MO,
we'll,
they're
we'll
not going to
get
be good defense.
we'll get into it later later in the year when we do more in-depth breakdowns. But the only way this team gets to the level that people want them to be at is if Benny Williams and Jesse Edwards turn out to be gods offensively down low. Because we mention this all the time. Who's scoring on the inside for this team? Does anyone know?
I can't.
Quincy
So
oh shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's that one meme where it's like,
Yeah.
as we all make that face right now.
Yep.
Because the one guy who did it is now playing for Oregon because he doesn't want to play inside. He wants to be a stretch. And so, which I don't like losing Quincy if that is truly the reason why he left the program. Like, I kind of get it.
yeah, he wants to show NBA scouts that he can play an NBA game, and he's not going to be playing an NBA game being a block post-up guy that Boeheim needs him to be in order to actually be a balanced offensive team.
Exactly. But this leaves us with this giant hole of saw Jesse Edwards has the ability to do so. We don't know if he can do it consistently or if the coaching staff will give him the opportunity to do so. Then you look at Benny Williams' game, and it feels like Benny Williams is an NBA-ready player, which means that, sure, he might be able to go inside, but will he want to go inside consistently? Buddy, honestly, and I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret, I honestly think it's Buddy Boeheim. Buddy...
It should be Boeheim and Gerard, but the thing is, both of them are so reluctant to also go inside because their games are so perimeter-based that it's gonna be another one of those things where it happens like 15% of the time, and because Boeheim and Gerard have actually shown some effectiveness when they have attacked the rim, and we keep saying it on the cast as well. Boeheim looks good when he attacks the rim. It's just that he doesn't do it often enough to make it a balanced part of his game.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Now the question will be,
hope...
does he? I guess when you look at next year too, nothing opens up as far as spacing wise for him to start slashing. So, that's a good part of his game. Where does it come through?
I honestly think these early games being against such difficult opponents are exactly why this season is going to potentially go off the rails early, just because this is you know what this team needs? An Italy trip or a Canada trip or something where they get some games early on against some competitive teams that force them to start figuring out what they are before they play other college teams. And obviously that's not on the cards this year. COVID restrictions, obviously, part one, part two being they already did the trip. You're only allowed one every 4 years. And the last Italy trip was when Buddy was on the team, so I'm pretty sure that means that we can't do it right now. So it just, this team is so raw and so green in the areas where it can't afford to be raw and green, that I'm scared. And we will, as Christian said, we're going to get into this when we get closer to the season. We don't need to be spelling doom and gloom right now. Just this is the preview for that.
This team needs a Lemoyne beating kick in the butt.
Yeah. And...
Hey, it worked last time.
Yeah, it did.
Speaking of teams that will not get beat by Lemoyne, but might get beat by a lot of other people, Syracuse football. I'm sorry.
No, look, I mean, Lemoyne might find a way, even though they don't have a football program. They might find a way.
It's
See, I didn't know where that. I was curious as to where that hard segue was going, because initially I was thinking you were leaning towards a team that would not get beat by Lemoyne or probably anyone else with Jeremy Grant.
No, I was not going there, but we probably should talk about Grant first.
I at least want to get
Olympian.
a touch in there, so I wanted to make sure we did not forget Mr. Grant, because he is now officially named to the USA men's basketball team.
Which is awesome, and I think that this is our first U.S. Olympian since Melo, correct? Well, if you
Yeah.
don't count coaching staff.
Gotta
Right.
be, yeah.
So good for Jeremy. Jeremy was fantastic this year on a very bad Pistons team.
Yeah.
So good for you, buddy. Get that payday.
Should we
And
also talk about Buddy Boeheim 2.0 as well?
yeah, I was gonna say we do that after I give our other Olympian shout out, Justin Knight, who is
Oh yeah, Justin Knight.
yeah. There's gonna be lots of orange in the Olympics this year. Steve and I kind of went through a lot of the Olympic trials that are in place in our last live cast. Justin officially was named to Team Canada, though. Justin and Jeremy are probably the best two chances we have for medalists, and both of them might win a silver or a gold, which is absolutely incredible for Syracuse and for these two young men. So congratulations to both of them. Now we can talk about future oranges. There was basketball Cruton before we talk about football Cruton. The basketball recruit, Jimmy Boeheim 2.0. Christian,
No,
tell me why I should be excited about this kid.
technically, if it was a Jimmy Boeheim, it'd be 3.0. But
Oh.
this is Buddy Boeheim 2.0.
There's too many Boeheim.
Yeah.
Is that the new plural? Boeheim.
I'm rolling with it.
Oh boy. See, this is what happens when we're off for 2 weeks. We're all rusty. Things like this happen. It's all for your
yeah.
viewing pleasure, folks.
Yes. So, Buddy Boeheim 2.0, also known as Justin Taylor, who comes from Charlottesville in Virginia, and his frame looks suspiciously like Buddy Boeheim 2.0. If you're wondering why we're calling him Buddy Boeheim 2.0, he's listed as a wing shooter and a small forward, but he's listed at 6'6", which I believe is the same size as Boeheim. So, like, in all likelihood, that means he's playing the 2 when he comes to Syracuse. And, like, while he does have some good, like, slashing game on his tape, he definitely seems like a prototypical, like, shooting guard that would be a perfect wing shooter for what Syracuse is nowadays. And it feels like Syracuse needs another big, like, interior presence to round out the class, but we say that about every Syracuse recruiting class. So, like, what's new?
Yeah, the class already has Kamari Lands, who's a 5-star, which is a fantastic thing to have. He's Lands and Taylor should play really well together, which is really nice.
Lands and Taylor sounds like an upscale menswear shop.
Yeah,
One that Michael Carter Williams hopefully does not steal a bathrobe from.
Very true. And now they can utilize their name, image, and likeness to make money off of said menswear shop.
Oh God.
We are really just coming full circle tonight, and we are really. This is showing that we haven't been on in 2 weeks. We haven't gotten all of our bad jokes out yet.
Also, for the record, I keep wanting to call Justin Taylor Justin Thomas, and that was a very different player from an awesome 6 overtime game.
Wow. Did not even think about that. I was thinking of a different Justin Thomas, but here we are now. I'm going to make that mistake at least 10 more times. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
I think the men's basketball recruiting feels like a roller coaster in that the lows are really low, as in our, top recruit ever decommits and then ends up at Oregon. But the highs are we're putting together like a top 10 recruiting class in terms of like overall players for 2022, which I don't really know how to feel about this roller coaster ride. I think Benny Williams is going to be a big part of how we feel moving forward, because Williams is kind of the first of this wave of 4 and 5-star talent that's coming in after the Orange went through a long period of time without landing a top 100 player. Now they're going to have Benny coming in 2022. They've got 2 locked up already. Like, this is the way that Syracuse typically recruits. We just went through a phase where they didn't typically recruit like that.
And people will peg the sanctions as a reason for that. And I still don't know if I buy that, but that's what you're going to hear.
Syracuse still got highest battle through those sanctions.
Yeah. Yeah, you had battle. You had the commitment from Johnson in 22. You had all sorts of other things going on. I can't imagine a shortened roster, especially in an era of one and dones, is really something that would have affected it a whole hell of a lot. But whatever, here we are.
Yeah, we are here. The recruiting classes are rounding back up a bit. I think overall it's going to be interesting. We're going to have to wait and see how the real elephant in the room fares, which is head guy at top, who seems to be going absolutely nowhere if you listen to what he talks about. The point that there's an alumni team of former players who played under this guy, still going in their 8th year, 9th year. Boeheim's Army is going to be playing in the basketball tournament, otherwise known as TBT. This year's team is more like Jim Boeheim and his amazing friends, because there's a lot of non-Orange alumni in this year's team. The ultimate reason why, for those who might be wondering, I thought this was their one shtick. The team has been doing this for a while. They've never won the prize, even though they're one of the most favored teams. And I think they're at the point where they just kind of want to win some money. So they're bringing in some members of former Dynasty Overseas Elite, who is not going to be participating in this year's tournament. They added DeAndre Kane and DJ Kennedy, both who were Overseas Elite cornerstones of those teams. Steve, we kind of already covered it. I don't really know what to make of TBT until they get out on the floor. But it really seems like they've got a lot of freak athletes out there, and they're going to see what happens. Which is what Syracuse does anyways.
And it's a weird one because, you have the dichotomy of people complaining that Boeheim's Army isn't all people that played for Boeheim, even though the first edition of Boeheim's Army wasn't all people that played for Boeheim. So, if these guys all seem to fit, and especially coming from Overseas Elite and having been through the paces, all seem to fit the mold of, hey, let's go out and win this damn thing, Major League style. So let's just win the whole effing thing. I don't know. They all complement the pieces that we needed. So I don't see why people would possibly be complaining, but then I've also know people all too well, and that they will complain about anything. So, yeah.
Which is known as the Syracuse fan base.
Indeed. Here we are.
Here we are indeed. Speaking of our wonderful fan base getting hyped and sometimes angry about things, let's talk football recruiting. We have to eat our vegetables. Let's talk the negative. The Orange's primary target was a quarterback who was playing in New Jersey, but he's from the Bronx, Henry Beeline. Beeline ended up going with the Duke Blue Devils, which is a bit frustrating. This is now the second time in consecutive years that the Syracuse #1 quarterback target has chosen Duke over the Orange. It's also the second time that Syracuse has lost its top quarterback recruit after being the first to offer said recruit. This is not...
The big kicker is that Duke only offered Beeline on June 3rd.
Yes, and this was at the third kick to the nuts, is that Nick Monroe was this primary recruiter. In the past, Monroe hasn't really touched the quarterback side. He usually handles a lot of the Florida skill positions and a lot of the defense. Monroe is the recruiting extraordinaire for the Orange staff, and the fact that he ended up losing this kid, I'm not going to say he didn't get it done, definitely lost this kid to Duke. It is a real punch in the gut, especially considering that since Tommy DeVito's commitment to the Orange, they've really had to rely on some transfers, and we are banking on Lamson being guy because there's not another guy in the pipeline at the moment.
Well, that's sort of the thing, I think, is that, and in the modern scape, we're going to see this more and more. Someone like Schrader coming in, who still has 3 years of eligibility, may have actually impacted something like Beelin's recruiting. You've got a guy behind the guy who was a SEC recruit who started games in the SEC, who is now the backup to Tommy DeVito, as well as Morgan and Markevich, who have game experience. You look at the Syracuse recruiting, or the Syracuse quarterback room, and it's kind of rough for recruiting, because you have DeVito technically has next year as well if he wants it. So you have him with an extra year. You have Schrader with 3 years. You have Markevich and Morgan who have 4 years, all of which have shown they can play at the ACC level or above. So it's kind of a funky situation for any recruit coming in. Like, how do you prove yourself? Where do you prove yourself? And where do you want to, like, do you go to Duke where there's a track record of developing quarterbacks? Not necessarily at Duke. Well, I guess the New York Giants beg to differ. But sorry, John. But there is a systemic track record of that staff pumping out quarterbacks to the league. So do you do that and sit behind for a while, or do you come to Syracuse and sit behind 4 guys, at least 2, possibly 5, with Lamson coming in? So I understand why he went to Duke. I don't like it. I would much rather have us landed him, but I get it. And that's, I think, a perspective that a lot of people need to kind of... The holistic picture of recruiting is a weird situation, and I'm probably getting a little more existential than I need to, so I'm going to cut back on that. But recruiting's a weird-ass... It's just a weird situation all around. You're trying to convince a kid who is going to college to come to your school for X, Y, and Z reasons. How you do that is... It's apparently Nick Monroe knows what the hell he's doing, because he's nailed everyone except for this one, and the fact that they brought Monroe in on this one means they really did want Beelan. So it's just a weird ass situation, but I get where he's coming from and why he would have committed to Duke.
I just think that quarterback for the next couple of years, like for the reasons that Steve mentioned, is going to be tough for Syracuse to recruit for. Because guys in this day and age are going to want playing time, and they're not going to want to sit behind and develop too much. And when you have a decent pipeline in Schrader, Lamson, and Morgan, all behind currently DeVito, that's a lot of guys you have to play through. And so, like, maybe for the next year or two, there's going to be guys who don't want to come to Syracuse because they don't want to sit and develop and play on the scout team.
And this is where the on-the-field results do matter. We've heard Stephen Godfrey, Bill C. We've heard all these guys who cover football in a much more formal but yet informal way talk about how every recruit thinks that they can change the program. They don't really care if the program wins or loses. It's, if you're in this level that Syracuse is looking at. But what does matter is, Steve, as you hit on, if you are going to be the quarterback that sits for 2 or 3 years, you better be going into a program with a track record of developing and churning out quarterbacks that can go on and play at the next level. Because that's what these kids who are, 3 and low 4 stars are looking for, is how can I take my development to the next level to get to that level, the blue chippers? How can I put myself in that conversation? And it comes down to development of the staff. And while Babers has had plenty of luck pre-Syracuse, at Syracuse, that hasn't necessarily been the case. Dungy was a fantastic college player, has yet to really land in any kind of professional football sense. DeVito has been the guy since then. DeVito, unless this year is something that we haven't seen before, is probably also not going to be going anywhere after his Syracuse football days. So it becomes, we need to start seeing something on the field, otherwise you're going to continually run into this issue where there's going to need to be a clear succession plan of whoever you're bringing in is next on the totem pole. And that's really tough to say, because by my own logic, I don't think that means that Syracuse is going to be able to win these recruiting battles for quarterbacks in the next 3 to 4 years. It's gonna be a while, and that's really frustrating. So, do we want to talk about some happier news after that downer of a down news?
Yeah, I would say we stay on the Cruton topic and send it to the happy side, the good place, if you will.
I love The Good Place. Great show. You all should watch that. I know you guys have, but I just mean everybody else who's watching in the world. The defensive back university that is Syracuse has continued to grow with 3 3-star recruits recruiting who are listed as defensive backs. We have Quan Peterson, Chase Atkinson's already on the program. Jeremiah Wilson, and then there's the linebacker who I am having a hard time finding the name
Mason.
of.
Zakai Mason.
Kai Mason, thank you. So those are 3 defensive players who are coming in, 2 defensive backs. Peterson is from South Carolina. He had some ACC offers from Georgia Tech. Also had a bunch of G5 offers in Tulane, Marshall, App State, Georgia State. Jeremiah Wilson is somebody that Stephen Bailey profiled in depth. He got a conversation with a bunch of coaches. Wilson seems to profile a lot like an Andre Cisco type who got a lot of offers late in the cycle from Arizona, Iowa State, Washington State, and picked Syracuse and seems to have a body and a work ethic that can develop out. But Steve, you are highest on the linebacker. Tell me why we should care about Makai Mason.
Well, McCason. Yeah, we're just going to shorten it.
Yes.
Makai Mason.
All right, we got his nickname.
All right, sold. All right, we're moving with that forward.
NFT. Go.
Oh God. No,
the NIAAL. They gotta be thinking about these things.
Perfect. He comes to us as a resident Florida man, which we are nailing lately. Like, we've recruited Florida pretty hard, and we've done pretty well there. But he did, when you look at his offer list, have a couple head turners like Florida State, LSU, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Louisville. So, and more Power 5 programs beyond that. So it's like, when you're looking at this guy, he's a 3-star, but he's got some high profile eyes on him. So I'm thinking he's probably ready to step in relatively quick. To offset the Monroe missed on Beelan, he nailed Mason. So he was the head recruiter on Mason. Brought another solid linebacker into the fold. He does kind of he plays in high school and projects to play both middle and outside, so he kind of slots nicely into that 3-3-5, where the flexibility and athleticism should really shine through. So overall, I think he's probably my highest of the 3. Wilson seems to also be an under the radar kid that we've snagged, which is phenomenal to see. Can't really go wrong. Like, I'll take any of those 3 guys.
Yeah, and like mentioned just some of the other like schools that Mason turned down to come to Syracuse, West Virginia, Ole Miss, and also Indiana. So hi, Connor. But like we're slowly seeing, like, while the defensive backs are important, the linebackers become one of the most integral parts of the 3-3-5, especially after the run defense mishaps last year. The linebackers are the first guys who are going to attack the run defense, and so the fact that you can add more guys who are very high in the eyes of other schools is only helpful, especially for a linebacker unit that goes through a lot of guys. Like, the linebacker unit last year went too deep a ton of times.
Yeah.
More so than the other units did. So
yeah, it seems like they want to. Yeah, it seems like White really wants to rotate those guys through. I know this week I did my get to know on Stephon Thompson, and when you look at his numbers, you know, he started 7 of the 11 games. He also he played in all 10 that he was available for. But you look at the 2 deep, all of the outside guys and the middle guys got like 1 and 2 deep. The ones got more run, but not by a whole hell of a lot. Like, it's a spot where they're rotating the guys through and getting reps for a good number of bodies. So
yeah, I bet if you look at the difference between minutes played
Yep.
between the 1 and 2 deep at the linebackers, it's probably surprisingly closer than most people think.
100%.
I'm intrigued by the way that we've started to recruit, because I think on the defensive side, at least, there's now this proof of concept that the 3-3-5 works and how the 3-3-5 wants to be played. So we have a little bit more intentionality with the players that we're going after. Before, you know, we've talked about this before. about how we're kind of just going for these like athletic freaks that don't necessarily have a position. There's a lot of tweeners that we're trying to get. But now that there's, hey, this is what you can do in the system, I think you're going to start to see a lot more of those higher end guys that are still tweeners that aren't 5 stars, but they're definitively better at a lot more of the next level stuff that we'd be spending your freshman, sophomore year kind of coaching up. And especially, and it's really exciting for Mason because, as you guys mentioned, with that rotation and with White's clear comfort in playing freshman, there's a really good chance we could see him on the field, in 2 seasons when he's enrolled on campus, because it is great that we were able to funnel in this young talent. It's also because there's a good chance he's probably going to be better than a lot of other guys what the day that he arrives.
I think the big thing that you mentioned there is that the defense has an identity, and the 3-3-5 has given the defense an identity and given the players who Syracuse are recruiting a tangible thing to go after and say, okay, I can visualize myself in the roles in the system that you're talking about. And I think that's kind of what's missing on the offense, because on the offense, really, the only identity the offense has is the no-huddle style Baylor offense. There's not much complexity and role and identity that the offense has other than that, okay, we're going to no huddle and then call something on the line at the fly. So I think that's where you start to see, that's why you have a lot of these defensive recruits committing, because like you said, Andy, they can visualize themselves into 3-3-5 and say, okay, I can see what I'm doing play after play after play. Or on the offense, it's like, okay, what are we doing next?
Yeah. So the football recruiting front seems to be on the upswing, which is a great thing for the Orange and for the program. Overall, I think that is yet another week where we've covered almost 2 weeks worth of news in an hour. This is probably not going to be the standard that we hold ourselves to, but it was kind of nice to take some time off and come back and have a full plate of Orange news to talk about. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing this again all summer long. We'll have Connor joining us. We'll have some other special guests joining us. Steve and I might have like a game night worked out at some point in time. There's going to be a lot of fun that we do with this series throughout the summer now that there's no sporting events. And I'll save you all the Loki Black Widow show for next week after we've all kind of watched Black Widow and we're waiting for the finale of Loki.
Is Black Widow out this week?
Friday.
It is available at 12:01 Eastern time on Friday, I think.
Oh God, I've got to break out a block of my schedule for that then. Holy Christ.
Well, 12:01 to 2:30 is probably going to work for you.
You know what? That seems like a good block of time. That's a good idea.
I don't think you have anything else scheduled for that outside of sleep, so you should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my wife's birthday on the 9th. She has said she doesn't want to watch it, so I am watching it before she wakes up.
There you go. That's how
we do this.
That's all of my Loki and Bad Batch have been recently. Is dog wakes up at 5:30, I'll watch through. Wife wakes up at 6:30. Good to go.
It's again, we're gonna save the in-depth preview for a week where there's absolutely nothing happening in Syracuse land, and you're all gonna listen to it because we're a fun crew and we'll make it fun and do our favorite Lokis of all time compared to Jim Boeheim's of all time. I think that
Exactly.
there's a good one. Oh, I have to write that article now.
Yep.
The Jim
you
Boeheim
do.
variance is an interesting topic that we need to get into at
That
some
is
point.
that is 100% finale of Loki week content right there, sir.
Oh, God, don't let John listen to this. All right, everybody. That is it for
Cut the camera. Quick, cut the camera.
That is it for another Troy Nunes is an absolute live cast. On behalf of Christian, on behalf of Steve, on behalf of everybody at NunesMagician, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you tell all your friends about it. Share it out there to everybody. If you're watching this in the news article tomorrow morning, thank you again for visiting NunesMagician.com and check out the rest of our coverage that we have across the website. Guys, I will talk to you some point next week. We'll figure out the date. We'll tweet it out ahead of time. And go Orange.
Go Orange.